Several things. One of them is that I've spent a lot of time in Germany. I did my doctoral work in Belgium, lived in Belgium for 10 years, but I actually did a lot of my research in Germany. So I've traveled there, have friends there, know a good deal about the culture. And I'm very intrigued by the World War II and the post-war period. I was further intrigued, and this is going back earlier in my life. I served for 9 years as a chaplain working in an interfaith setting. And one summer, I borrowed all of the books that my Jewish colleague had on the Holocaust, sat down and read them. I discovered quickly that it's not a good idea to read that sort of thing right before you go to bed. But it did give me sort of a crash course in the causes of the Shoah, the Holocaust, how people survived, sometimes just by plain dumb luck. And for me as a non-Jew, to see the role of the righteous among the Gentiles, as it's called at Yad Vashem in Israel, which I just recently visited, those who put themselves on the line to save Jews in the face of a threat to their own lives politically, but also from their own fellow citizens in some cases. The Holocaust was not carried out only by Germans in the military at that time. It was carried out by local partisans in Poland, Ukraine, Lithuania, wherever else. It was their Jewish people's own fellow citizens in their own countries, and that war period brought that latent, violent anti-Semitism to the surface. So these are all sort of currents that play into it. In a way, I relate to Sophie Scholl as a young woman who was righteous in that sense. Now, her focus and that of the movement, the White Rose, was much larger. They did mention in their leaflets, the illegal leaflets that they wrote, duplicated, and distributed, of course, at the danger of their lives, they did target what was happening to the Jews. They also targeted other things, lies that were being told about the progress of the war, what was happening to the young people in Poland, especially the Polish nobility. And it's interesting that because all of this became material for these students' leaflets in mid and late 1942, that means it was fairly common knowledge. Otherwise, how would these specific people have had access to that type of knowledge? So in that sense, Sophie and her friends were saying what everyone knew but was afraid to say out loud. I really respect their courage in doing that. Sometimes find myself in the same position, being the one who says what other people are saying but they don't want to be connected with. And then I serve as the lightning rod for the flack that comes as a result. But I admire tremendously her courage. Interestingly, the sense of peace that Sophie and the White Rose made was not political, because as I pointed out in the paper, the war continued for more than 2 years after they were executed on February 22nd, 1943. But in terms of a model, in terms of the text, the writing that they made available and that was spread throughout Germany and even smuggled out to England, but also in that other sense of peace that I mentioned, she was remarkable for her composure and serenity, all through the interrogation process and all through the trial. I mentioned, too, that in order to make this a kind of a show trial, a particularly brutal judge named Roland Freisler was flown in from Berlin to Munich to conduct the trials. He was violently verbally abusive during the trial, tried to be intentionally provocative, and she didn't take the bait. This 21-year-old young woman stood her ground, at peace with herself, kept her composure, did not take the bait. And even when she saw her parents for what would turn out to be the last time shortly before her execution, She showed no signs of being nervous or shaky. Her mother asked if she wanted something to eat, and she said, "Oh, great, because I didn't get any lunch." I mean, she could be just that, down to earth about it. And yet it was not denial. She knew exactly what she was doing. We have a citation from her that says, so many people have died for this war. It's about time somebody died against it. And that proves that she knew what she was doing. She knew the possible costs.